I believe your body is basically like cheering underneath. It's like, yes, finally you're listening to me. Working in hospitals, I worked in palliative care as well, hearing people's stories about what they wanted to do in life, what they miss, what they're sad about, and feeling like life is so precious and so short, and how can we just help to enjoy that and be well doing that.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the podcast. So if you're new, welcome to your first episode. I have a wonderful guest with me today, which is Dr. Elizabethannball, and she is an authorized Ashtanga yoga teacher with a PhD in Immunology and the founder of online Ashtanga Yoga Lisbon. And she's also just recently launched her first online yoga membership program, and she's going to tell us all about her journey with that. She's one of the most genuine and generous souls that I know. And when I first met her joining one of her Ashtanga classes, I felt immediately this rare level of purity that she carries, and her guidance and teaching style felt empowering and supportive. And I remember leaving the class feeling so alive. As people like Liz are such a rare gem, I wanted to bring her on the podcast so you can get a taste of her magic as well. Yeah, so I'm curious to dive into your personal journey, Liz. Welcome to the podcast, the power and impact yoga represents for you, and your experience of creating a business doing what you love.
Thank you, Vanessa. I mean, I'm just so touched by the introduction. We're sat here as we do this, and it really warms my heart. Thank you so much for everything you said.
Sure.
And thank you for having this chance for us to chat and to be here with you and to share my small journey with your listeners as well. And I hope it resonates with them, so it helps you wherever you are on your journey of creating a business you love or following your passion. So yeah, I'm pleased to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm so happy that we have you, and especially because we're sitting in Liz's house right now, and we just had lunch together and got to talk a bit, and so now I'm curious to dive into all the details. So maybe let's start at the beginning. You have quite a unique background going into yoga with your doctor in immunology. Did your yoga practice inspire you to study immunology? Tell us how these two are connected.
So I remember when I began practicing yoga, I was really young. I was like 15, 16. And I think in the end, looking back on it, what drew me to it was that I needed something to calm me down when I was working for exams or studying in school. So I really sought out a practice to kind of help my mind as well as keep me physically fit. I'm always very sporty at school, athletics, netball, various things in the UK.
Wow.
So yeah, that was always something I really loved. And then I think as I started in school learning biology and science, for me, it just felt so natural, of course, to really love moving my body and wanting to understand how my body itself worked. So the two of them just for me from the beginning just made so much sense to go together. And then I was very academic. I still really enjoy learning about the body and learning other things now. I finished the PhD. And throughout all my study, yoga was very much a thing that I used to help me stay alert, stay focused, keep my practice going. So I was physically fit, feeling well all through the years of studying, PhD, etc. And the immune system was something that I only really dove into once I moved to Lisbon and did my PhD. It's not as though I came from my degree in biology, biomedical science, where we learn basically a lot of really what med students do, but we don't learn how to then treat. We just learn how to kind of understand and diagnose, but we don't learn the treatments. And so when I moved to Lisbon, the PhD was very much around who do you want to work with? And it was a very amazing PhD program here based in Lisbon. And so one of the PIs, the principal investigator, his group was in immunology. And I knew that I wanted to work around a human disease. I wanted to understand even more the human body. I wasn't in for like something else related to like, I don't know, microbiology or various other things to do with different topics. And so actually his expertise was immunology. So that was a whole new topic for me to discover through the PhD. But I loved it because it became something that kind of a mantra for me through my life was about kind of having a healthy lifestyle and disease prevention. You know, what do we do really much on a daily basis in rituals, daily practices that is keeping you healthy? And the more kind of I learned about health and through my degree, medical science, everything that can go wrong. And I thought, God, there just needs to be something out there that's like keeping healthy, you know, like health management, disease prevention. That's it. I wanted to like learn more about that. So then when his particular group was learning about malaria, that was my topic for my PhD. It was also going to be a deep dive into your own immune system. What goes wrong when you have you catch malaria? What goes wrong when your immune system becomes autoimmune disease? There was so many more things to learn, and it was a whole new topic that I was like, okay, great, I'm just going to learn so many more things in these 4 years. And I love that. I really loved it. So then it just kind of solidified the sense for me of life is so complicated. Life is always going to happen. Stuff is always around us that's going to knock us off track. Cancer is, horribly prevalent. And what can I do on a daily basis is going to keep me well, help me prevent diseases at the best of my physical ability. And yoga for me was something that I was always doing through my PhD, and I loved it and I practiced it. And it just kind of came more to the surface of in the sense of maybe this is what's keeping me healthy, maybe more of these types of practices make sense to be including in your daily life. And I'm a really strong advocate of healthcare as well, and how we treat ourselves, and that we are kind of the best people to be responsible for our health. And that's who we turn to support us could lead more to yoga teachers, healthcare practitioners, therapists, people like this, as opposed to sometimes what happens in hospital settings, somebody is ill and then they go to the hospital to be treated. What could you be doing on a daily basis that's preventing you reaching this point where, a disease happens, a chronic disease starts to happen? And I worked for a number of years in hospitals as well. I also volunteered in palliative care between my degree and my PhD before I moved to Portugal.
What was the degree that you were pursuing before?
So biomedical science. So in this degree, it's 3 years. It's a really intense study. And it's basically, I'd say, the first 2 years of med school. So you're taught about cancer, how your brain works, how your physiology works, all of anatomy. You do dissection. You do like everything basically about how your whole body works. You have to name every vein, every artery, every muscle, everything. So it's super, super involving. And I loved it all. I like soaked it up. I was like, this is me. And then the difference between this and medical school is that in med school, you then go on and you treat what you've learned. You diagnose, you understand how to diagnose patients and then what the treatment would be. So we also do study pharmacology. So, prescriptions, all these things, how they're working on the body, etc. So it's vast. It's wonderful. And then from that, you can go on and then study PhD. You can then go on to do your master's in research. You can go on to study further things like radiology or any type of hospital job, I would say. Even I used to work in hospitals as well, where I worked in microbiology units, hematology units. When you go into the hospital and you have your urine sample, your other samples, I worked in the lab where you then analyze that to understand what's going on. And so I basically was like, anything linked to how the human body works, I'm in, But all of that medical background and knowledge, nobody was really saying what to do on a daily basis to keep you well. It was all about, okay, this person has this. We've found this person is in this state. And I kept thinking, but how do I help myself not get to that state? That's what I think really interested me most. And so during my PhD, in my lab, you really were encouraged to research outside of just your area. So it very much collaborative work, understanding the papers on this, how can you draw something from that paper, how can it apply to the work you're doing. So it really was looking outside of really what's the thing that you're studying. And I think that's one of the things I've really kept in my life now, is in the sense of just keep a broad view of how things are and how can things can you connect the dots between a lot of what we do? And I think that's something that I really honed and I really like. I can still watch now some immunology lectures that I'm still a part of and think, okay, but maybe when you do yoga, this is what's happening in your blah, 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 blah. So I really draw upon that training still very much today, and really in the sense of, as I said, like, what am I doing on a daily basis to help me stay well? And I think that's something that then full circle came back to yoga. So that may be a very, very long-winded answer to the question.
No, great. It's really great. Thank you for giving us such an extensive answer, because I think we don't talk enough about it. And I think a lot of people can imagine what immunology means or stands for, but the deeper understanding you just gave us. So thank you so much for that, because the science behind our immune system and knowing what is going on in our body is so valuable, and not enough people actually share that knowledge with the masses, right? Like, they are sitting in their lab and they know how it works, but I think this is a really empowering information, and you are sharing it through your yoga practice, and I feel like this is very unique. There are not so many people who combine these two fields, and I especially love that you name it personal healthcare practice on your website, throughout your brand, because most people would refer to healthcare as booking a doctor's appointment or doing a blood screening, right? And you are talking about preventative healthcare, and I think this is so crucial, because this is going to help us be proactive with our health and actually take care of our bodies on a long-term scale before even getting to the point of getting sick, right? So what does healthcare, you already talked a little bit about it, but tell me a little more in detail, what does healthcare mean to you, and how do you define it and why?
So I think one of the biggest things that always got me, and I did this also. You go into a doctor's office and suddenly you feel like that person knows everything about you. And actually they don't. They know about science, they know about the body, but they don't know what it feels like when you don't feel well, or when you know in yourself you've been off for a week or so. And I think we're so willing to put the health of our health in somebody else's hands and say, take care of me and do this. And I think when I started feeling that and understanding that, and I kept thinking, well, you're really responsible for your health. And so how can I help people be empowered to take that responsibility back? Because as soon as you take charge of your health and are making choices every day about your health, you're going to be more committed to that. And you're going to feel also more inclined to make healthier choices. Because often what I would always hear in a yoga space is, oh, I don't have the body for yoga. I'm not flexible. I'm not strong enough. I'm not disciplined. I have bad habits. You're human. Everybody does all those things. And actually, one of the research that was done from a part of a group that I'm with, which is Yoga for Health. It's been founded in London in the UK. It works also closely with the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK. It found through research of a number of students who took part in that first project was that it's through a yoga practice you make healthier choices. It's not because you're healthy in the beginning that then yoga is suited for you. It's actually the practice of yoga which helps you choose healthier things later on. Food choices, going to bed earlier, how you treat yourself, relationships with others. So part of that for me really helped me link back to yoga as a practice in itself, and also an understanding that in itself is a healthcare practice. So in my mind, it was as clear as day. I was like, of course, that makes sense. So really what I try to then support students in is not only what you're physically doing on your yoga mat and how that's helping your health, but all the practices around it, your motivation to get on your mat, how you treat yourself before you go to bed, how you have a relationship towards yourself, to others, because in the ancient texts of yoga, it discusses that as well. This part of the Ashtanga itself is 8 limbs, and only one limb is the physical practice, the asanas. All the other limbs embody how you have compassion with somebody else, how you keep yourself clean, how you keep your house clean, how you also withdraw your senses within, you become less about gossiping outside, things like this. And so it's very relevant still to how we live in this day now, modern life, and what they kind of advised us on in ancient times. And I feel like when I finished my PhD, I was very much looked upon by my supervisors when I said to them, I'm going to go and teach yoga full time, that I suddenly had 6 heads, because it was like, what? But I said to them, there's something about this link between the two and the healthcare practices that we can do ourselves, that ultimately I don't want people in hospitals. I want to minimize how many people are in hospitals. I want to minimize the power that people think a doctor has, because looking at the healthcare system in terms of, it's fantastic, and when we need it for emergency care, it's wonderful, but it's completely also overrun. It's very difficult financially. There's so many loopholes in it. There's so many problems in the NHS, I'm sure in other healthcare systems as well. Not enough doctors, too many patients, all those things. So during COVID, when I was starting also to do some support for doctors and healthcare providers, I thought to myself, well, also helping them is helping ourselves. If I can learn how to take care of myself on a daily basis through healthy practices like yoga, eating habits, sleeping habits, all those things, it's going to prevent me potentially becoming ill with certain ailments that I can look after myself with, and then prevent me going to hospitals and needing some sort of care there, which is minimal care. I'm not talking emergency care where you need to be in a hospital. And particularly when I did the Yoga for Health program, we spoke to GPs, and some of the things that people go to GPs, I'm talking about a family doctor if you're not from the UK, is stress levels. It's managing stress. It's maybe you're on potentially looking into cardiovascular disease. Maybe you have anxiety, depression. And a lot of that also can be supported through group practices or supported people in your community, therapists, yoga teachers, people who are qualified, most importantly, qualified to support you in this. But a lot of that doesn't need medical care, prescription drugs, things like this. It actually might need somebody to really see you, hear you, and help you get to feeling better in yourself. And that for me is like, that equals yoga, quite simply, because I think having somebody there with you, supporting your practice, seeing you in a group, helping you understand yourself better. It came to the sensation of we're all basically saying the same things, medical doctors, therapists, support workers, but we use a different language. We all want to support people and help them understand themselves better. And so for me, it just felt like doing that through a yoga practice versus doing that in a hospital setting. We can support each other in that way.
Yeah, I love that. And you already opened the topic around that yoga is more like a lifestyle or like a way of life rather than this trend, right? Because in the last years, yoga has become more mainstream, I would say, more popular, more trendy in a way. And we see all the people hopping around on the yoga mat, and that's fair, right? Like this body style yoga. And I think this is also what made it popular. But I think what you're talking about is way deeper and way older, right? Ancient. Yoga is ancient, an ancient way of life, an ancient practice. And like you said, it's not just a physical practice, it is all encompassing. It sounds nearly a bit like religion, right? Like it teaches you certain values and it teaches you certain principles that you can lead your life with. So maybe you can go just a little bit deeper on what yoga really is rather than what many people think like a aerobic practice.
And I would say some people do think yoga is a religious practice. It's not. You don't have to be in a certain religion to do this practice. People call it a spiritual practice, in the sense of you're maybe seeking some knowledge and you're trying to understand yourself better. That can also be a spiritual practice. And I think what happens is that with a lot of things that come from an ancient source, it kind of gets watered down through life. What that means is that, of course, it becomes, let's say, for the masses. So then there's hot yoga exists, but there's like hot yoga, vinyasa, rock yoga, whatever. I'm just pulling names out, but it then becomes anything and everything. And I think whenever somebody seeks a yoga practice, it's important to find a teacher that you resonate with. And I'd say that even stands for the work you do, something we spoke about before. How can your journey help somebody? And as a student, if you're seeking a yoga practice, firstly, what are you seeking it for? And who is the right teacher to support you? And ultimately, don't put your teacher on a pedestal, because they are just a normal person as well. They've had, things happen in their life and they're there hopefully to support you. But one thing I'm very clear on is that they need to be qualified to be there for you and to support you. because your yoga teacher also, they're not your therapist, they're not your counselor, they're not there to diagnose anything as well, even if people have knowledge. So seek them to get from them what you need. And often that's a safe space. It's a place that you can then feel part of a group. It's then a place that you enjoy going to or having that support from somebody. And so whenever I work with somebody, I really try to get very clear in is, what are you motivated to do here? What are you here for? And can I meet your need? Because that for me is really important. I'm not going to solve all your problems, nor is yoga. So it's in the sense of, why are you seeking this? And once you're clear on that, you're quite clear on what's going to keep you doing this practice. Because it's a discipline. Yoga, firstly, I would say, is a discipline. And it's a practice where you're seeking knowledge about yourself. And it's a tool to do that. And if it speaks to you sometimes as a physical level, and for sure when I was young, and even so sometimes now, I love it because it's so physical. It keeps me in good shape. I feel great doing it. But as I've matured through the practice, I also really love the other sides of it. And so the Ashtanga yoga, which is what I'm qualified in and authorized in, as I said, is an 8-limbed practice. So Ashto is 8 in the Sanskrit and made up of 8 parts. And a lot of mainstream yoga practice focus just on it being a physical practice, and often people may do 5 yoga classes a week, and one is this, one is that, one is this. And if that appeals for you and that's enough for you, great. But understand that that's very much, I'm not going to say superficial, but that's very much just like the first layer of a yoga practice. And there's many kind of layers to it. And depending on what you seek yourself, you'll go as deep as you wish to go. And also, your teacher shouldn't prejudice how much you go into that. I'm not a philosophy teacher also on yoga. I don't teach chanting and things like this, but people do. And if that resonates with you, some people love to go into that part of their yoga practice, as well as keeping it also a physical practice themselves. So understand that there's so much depth to yoga. And what I found in my journey is I was drawn to it physically, to help a little bit of anxiety, to feel good in myself, to feel strong. And then throughout my years of practice, I got more involved in sense of but where does it come from? Where did this, come about? And I think how it came, particularly in the Ashtanga lineage, it was this sequence of Ashtanga was created by somebody called Pattabhi Jois, who was the grandfather of my teacher based in Mysore, India. And that's like the origin, the Mecca, let's say, of Ashtanga yoga. Again, not a religious practice, but that's kind of your Mecca. But before him was his teacher. And so his teacher was Krishnamacharya, and he was also the guru or the teacher of Iyengar. And so you'll also see that there's basically like a big family tree of yoga. And where it really came about in the beginning was, let's say, from scriptures, passed on word of mouth from one teacher to the next. And so really that sense of learning a practice and being in yoga, they often say at the feet of your teacher, in the sense that you're humbled to what your teacher wants to, the knowledge to give you, is that you're learning a practice from like kind of word of mouth to the other person. And so it's only through when it became westernized, when some of the teachers were invited by the first Westerners who went over to India and Mysore and thought, this is a great practice, let's spread this out. Pattabhi Jois was then invited into the US, for instance, to California, and then he started teaching more and more people, and that's then kind of how it then spread about. And it was through those students who then asked, can we write a book on this? Can we, create a book with the pictures? Can we record the asanas and those things? That really is kind of the branches of the tree that then said grew and grew and grew, and it spread around. And then various, teachers then brought it to different countries. But we really in Ashtanga follow the lineage of your learning, and your knowledge still comes from the original source, which is my teacher, Sharat Jois, who still resides and teaches from Mysore, India. So when you often hear Mysore classes of India, it's named after the classes from India. But, that's, if you hear that, you're often understanding you're learning from a traditional Ashtanga yoga teacher. Because what happens with any knowledge often is it gets broken down, and through students, they think that works, but that doesn't. So I'm going to pick that out and leave the rest. And then they'll just teach certain things. And that can happen, and it's okay. But then just call it something else, Like if you're making a tiramisu, which is one of my favorite desserts, but you change something out and you do this, it's inspired by a tiramisu, So I think yoga is very vast and it can be a wonderful thing to explore. And I would always say, be on your journey in that. And also, whoever you're seeking your guidance from, seek it from somebody that you know is, let's say, legit, authorized, there to give you the right advice. And for me, very closely, it's working with you, because yes, yoga is about flexibility, understanding your body, but ultimately it's how the yoga is going to support you and your life, and not what you need to change in your life to have a yoga practice. I think I've become quite clear on that now.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for this explanation, because I feel like it's so important for people to understand. And I have to say, in my own process, it's also become so evident that yes, movement is important, but then you have like urban sports clubs and let's say all these apps now where you can just book a random workout class online and then show up, and that's great. But I also want to remind people that it's so good, like Liz just said, to build a network of practitioners and loved ones and friends around you. And I feel like I've said this before, but having that network and choosing the people that you want to have in your life and as your practitioners is so valuable, because you're going to build relationships with them, right? And long-term relationships. So if, let's say, Liz is your yoga teacher, she would be able to tell you, like today your body works differently than another day, so go softer, or let's do this practice. Or she would notice some things on your body or on your mood and help you balance it out, or get something out of you, or calm something down, right? And I think this is the power of long-term relationships. This is the power of dedicating yourself, or even devoting yourself to certain practices and certain people and certain experiences, right? And I think it's good that we talk about this a little, because often these choices are subconscious and we're not actively choosing those things. So Liz just sharing, hey, yeah, you can go 5 times a week to yoga and have it be like a practice that gets you a little out of your head and tones your body. But is this what you want, or are you seeking something deeper? And as Liz said, yoga can get you there, because it's not just a physical activity, right? It's so much deeper, and it has to do with mindfulness and values and human action at the end of the day. And this is so beautiful. So thank you for sharing that. As we're talking about, yoga as a practice, you're not just a teacher, you're also practicing yourself. And so starting at 15, 16, way back when, I think it's such an uncommon thing to do in the Western world, So I'm so curious, who or what brought you to yoga? And also, how did yoga inform your life and helped you through challenging times, good times? Maybe you can be your best example of what yoga can do for you.
For sure. I mean, I think, as I said, I was like 15, 16, a little bit anxious, bit of a geek. I love to study. And definitely what you said is great. It gets you out of your head, because it is a mindful practice, and it is something in the sense of you're taking aware of what you're doing. Mindfulness can also be awareness, consciousness. And so I think a yoga practice is really just helps you understand how to become aware of yourself. And I would say that's probably the greatest tool that I have, being in touch with myself, knowing when I don't feel good, when something's off, when, I need to rest on that day, or I have more energy and therefore I can do this when I'm starting a new project. So I think the greatest thing a yoga practice can give you is a daily check-in in terms of how you are. And that circles back to health, how am I feeling on this day? I've got this coming up. How can I prepare myself for the best launch of this thing, or I have a big meeting today at work? What can I do in my half an hour before this to feel good, to feel settled, to feel comfortable in my body, to get my mind focused but also relaxed? Yoga practice helps you in so many modern day ways that it's still as relevant now as it was in ancient times. And in ancient times, actually, coming back to the lineage of Ashtanga, it was used by the teacher to help somebody achieve health as well. So they often would seek out a yoga teacher to guide them in the sense of, I have this ailment in my body. And then your teacher would say, okay, do this and this and this pose, and that will help you get back to a healthy state. And so that particular teacher, which is the lineage of my teacher, what inspires me, Krishnamacharya, as well, because it also can be a very personalized practice, one-on-one with somebody or a small group, as well as being a sense of collective awareness and understanding when done in big groups as well. So I think my journey, how it helped me, is that it is this place that I come back to on a very regular basis that is steady and it's stable. So whatever is going on in my life around me, I step on my mat or I have my meditation practices, those things, and it helps me come back to a steady state, because life is always going to throw you something. It's always going to be hard and challenging. Stuff's going to always come up. And the kind of into my 30s, I've understood that more and more. A few years ago, I think it was 2021, my mum very sadly was diagnosed with a terminal brain cancer, which meant that I spent a lot of time for about 18 months back and forth to the UK. I ended up living there for a period of time. And my yoga practice meant more to me then. You would think, okay, suddenly everything goes out the window. All your time is dedicated to this event. But it meant that actually my yoga practice became so important because it helped me understand keeping myself well is the best thing I can do for my mum, because it means I can be with her daily. I can take care of her daily. If that's what you want to do, that's what I did. And so for me, it was again this tool to help me stay well, and not just physically well, but mindfully as well. And so when everything was daily different, things would happen, doctor's appointment, traveling here, family members, taking care of somebody, the mat was this steady place that I would come back to. And it was just this grounding sensation that I had. And I think that's really what I understood I used it for so many years when I was at university and through my PhD studies, because your head is so hectic when you're studying. There's so much going on. There's so much need, your hours or whatever, because of study, that a mat actually is just this place where you can and you just come back to yourself. You feel good. You have a moment of just moving your body, getting out that stagnant energy that's just sat there because of whatever you're holding on to through life. And you get a moment to just understand there's something bigger also at work. And sometimes that is just helpful to understand life is going to keep going on. I can move myself. I can move through this. I can do this. I'm getting more strength to do whatever is going on in my life right now. I'm getting more focused to go and do this big work presentation, getting stronger in my body to take care of my family members. And I think the question now that I ask, probably I'd say in the last 12 months, is more that, okay, you want to do a yoga practice? Fantastic. What do you want your yoga to help you achieve in your daily life? And often that's in service of somebody else. It's because I want to have more patience for my kids. It's because my job is really stressful and I need to have a moment where I can focus my mind. Great. That's what your yoga practice means to you. Because it can be much more than that. But at the end of the day, what is the nitty-gritty of a daily practice going to give you that's also going to help you keep this consistent practice and help you show up essentially for yourself? And mostly that's also because you want to be supportive for those around you. And that's something that I really learned in a very difficult way the last few years.
Beautiful. Thank you, Liz. And thank you also for sharing so vulnerably, because, the challenges you've been going through with your family, with your mom, that's something, very intimate. So sharing that with us, thank you so much. And I think, maybe whoever's listening right now and is going through something similar, I can imagine you feel sometimes like that could be selfish to keep a practice or to take care of yourself. But I think this is like a very old perception of how we're supposed to do things, right? We're changing now our mind and perspective and inner programming, if you will, to realize if we're not okay, we don't have the capacity to actually be there for others. If we're tired and done, how well can we really support somebody? And I know a lot of people have difficult time allowing themselves to self-soothe, to self-care, to show up for themselves. But then if this is you right now listening, we really invite you to take a moment and ask yourself, why do I not allow myself? Right? Because it's no longer about I don't have time. We all have these excuses. And in a moment, I'm also going to ask Liz a few questions around how can you make it work in your daily life. But Liz just talked so beautifully about her mat that supported her throughout life since she's 15, 16. And a mat, a yoga mat, is an object. And it's not about the mat. It's about what the mat represents. And that's for her rest, reset, self-soothing, time for herself. And I find this so beautiful because it's just such a simple thing, you know. It could be, oh, I need to book a Caribbean holiday in order to be okay. No, everybody always thinks we need to spend money and do all those things in order to be okay. But if we implement daily habits, daily acts of self-service, then we're going to be way more okay than, you know, suffering for 3 months and then taking 1 week of holiday. It's not really sustainable. And probably also on an immunology level, that's an interesting thing to look at. And I'm going to ask Liz to tell us a little bit about it and share also a bit about how can you make it work if you have 5 children and a husband and a job? Is there a minimum you could do a day that's not maybe a whole hour of practice?
And for sure, I loved everything you said, Vanessa, and it really, really resonates as well. Because what I hear often is people feel guilt, either that they're not doing something or even that they're doing something for themselves. And so either some students come to me and they are burnt out and they're like, I have to change something. I've been given a diagnosis by my doctor. I have high blood pressure. I need to do something. And then that sometimes forces you to do this because you know you need it. And that can be a bit of a wake-up call. But the hardest part of any dedicated daily practice is when you don't really see that you absolutely need it, but you know it's going to help you prevent hopefully something in the future. It's going to keep you well. And it's a little bit like topping up your cup, you know, and it's super simple analogy. When your cup is empty, there's nothing to give. So what I say is a small daily practice of just topping your cup a little bit, so you can keep giving is really what's most achievable for most people. Let's say 0.05% of people have an hour and a half every morning alone in a quiet space, a beautiful place to do a yoga practice. It's just not there. And the more you detach yourself from that ideal of that's what it needs to be. And if you have a retreat holiday, beautiful, amazing. But to keep this in your life in a daily way, what's achievable for you? And you can do anything in 5 minutes for sure. There's also sequences. We may have heard sun salutations, what we call Surya Namaskaras. 3 of them, 2 of B, if you know what I'm talking about. That's maybe like a 5-minute practice in itself. If you did that Monday to Friday, that time you will feel relieved from the aches that you sometimes have from sitting at a desk. You'll also have a little bit more mental clarity because the breathing alongside it also soothes the nervous system. You start to balance your nervous system. You also then allow your respiratory system just to open up a little more. You have more space in your body. And in 5 minutes, I honestly could say that would help change how then the rest of your day goes about. And also importantly is working out where can you get that 5 minutes. Some people need it in the morning and then they're willing to get up a little bit earlier, have that 5-10 minutes, 20, 25, whatever is possible, knowing that they need that for the rest of their day. Other people think, if I wake up and I try to take that time, but I know I have X, Y, and Z to do and I'm not going to switch off my mind, let's move that to the evening. And let that be your rest time that transitions you from work to home. And maybe then that short period of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, helps you then switch off and be more available for your partner. You can then be available for your kids. And it's really asking yourself, when is that time window going to open for you? Because it's there, you just have to work out what it is. And once you know what it is, that can become the consistent window that you go for. And also, if it can be Monday to Friday, fantastic. Some people may say that's a Saturday morning for me and a Wednesday afternoon. Great, but keep that. And often I say, schedule it in your calendar as you would a meeting. Schedule it as important as a meeting because it's a meeting for yourself. It's a time that you're saying, that's me and I need that because of X, Y, Z, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is for you. More patience, stretch from my body, my lower back. And the yoga teacher that you have, hopefully supporting you, will match your practices around that time frame and around your needs as well. So that I think would be like the first part. And then in terms of how it's helping you like on your immune system, often some people want to boost their immune system, strengthen their immune system. What's most important, I'd say, for health is you want to keep it as regulated, and I'm sure Vanessa's like, yes, yeah, regulated as possible, because it's the big shifts from a burnout to a huge, some people say, okay, I'm going to do yoga 5 days a week, I'm going to hit this really hard. One extreme to the other isn't really probably going to support you. It's the small daily habits that are making the biggest changes on your health. Any healthcare therapist, support person, wellness person will probably tell you the same thing, because your body likes to know what it's doing on a regular basis. So if you carve a little bit of time each day, the more you do that, the more your body's going to easily drop into that habit. The more it's going to sit down and be like, oh, this is my time to do this now. Great. And it's going to sink into it. Same as, let's think of when you're sleep training a baby. You have to do it on a regular basis. Whatever you're also trying to achieve in your life, the more practice you put in, the more your body is going to notice that that's the time that rest, restorative time takes place. And I would say that in the sense of sleep routines, eating routines, it doesn't mean that everything has to be disciplined and like in a ritual in your life, but just the more chance you give your body to get to know that that's what that time means: rest, restorative, a bit of movement, space to breathe, settle back into your body, headspace, the easier it's going to find to drop in, the more your body's going to seek that, and the more likely you are to keep that practice as well. And sometimes what's really hard is if you've been off for a couple of weeks or you've been ill, and then it's a struggle to get back. It's a struggle no matter how many years you've been doing this, because your body likes to know what it's doing. And so just also say to yourself, okay, it might be hard for the first 5 days, but afterwards I'm going to feel so great again. And it's just, I think, the biggest gift that you can give yourself, I would say.
That's beautiful. I loved listening to you. Thank you so much for explaining that, because I think it's so important. Maybe you can even briefly talk a little bit about what is happening when our body is so attuned to not doing it and you want to start it. Like you said, you fall off the wagon for 2 weeks and you're like, oh, now I need to start over, right? Like it's always hard, no matter how honed in on your practice you are. But at the same time, I'm curious what happens actually in your immune system, in your body. Let's say you couldn't do yoga for a month or a year even, maybe during COVID you were a couch potato. Hey, no judgment. I get it, we get it. But you say, hey, I want to do something for my health. I want to start doing yoga or any other practice. And your body will maybe start aching after the few first sessions, right? And maybe you can explain a little bit what happens in the body. And then also you talked before about, oh, this is what's going on in my body. And then the practitioner says, oh, do these postures. Why that? And what is happening in our body? Is this like acupuncture where we press certain acupressure points? Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Great, yeah, loads to cover. So first point, the acupuncture points. So we also have in our body what's called meridians. So those are, let's say, if you've ever seen an acupuncture chart and they have all the lines on the body, they're energetic channels that you have in your body as well. So when you do acupuncture or acupressure, they're trying to target those specific points in the body to relieve often overbearing things that your body is doing. So like maybe you have an ache or a pain, or you have a buildup, or you have an injury. That part of your body, let's say your knee, is then your immune system is highlighting that this area needs attention. So often if you have a swelling or something like this, your immune system, your immune cells have gone to that area. You have a buildup of cells, which is your immune cells, working to relieve the inflammation, to help the inflammation, because you need that also in the response, but also to reset the wound, combine getting rid if there's an infection, those types of things. So a swelling is necessary in that case. So you have these energetic channels going around the body. So if somebody comes to me and says, I have a bit of a
bad shoulder or something happened there. You may also just have like a little small injury or something that's kind of gone on there over the years, and you may be receiving treatment for that. That's also going to impact a little bit how the rest of your body has compensated for that. And so on an immune system level, if it's been for many years, that might be really, really subtle and might not be very much. Also, what can sometimes happen in autoimmune diseases, something comes up because your body has taken on an increased load for a longer amount of time, and your body then has just got so used to being in a higher state of response, meaning your immune system has just had to respond for a longer period of time, that then becomes chronic, and you're always in a state of an immune response. That's really kind of an autoimmune disease in a snippet. So essentially, when somebody comes with maybe something that's underlining in their body, there may be a tendency.
Sorry to jump in. Can we do an example? Maybe the thyroid?
Thyroid could be a good example. Asthma, some people say this, or this could also be something, So in that sense, if somebody comes with this, your immune system may already be in, let's say, a little bit of a hyper-aroused state, which may mean that physically you may tire a little bit quicker, the amount of physical effort you can do is a little bit less, and that always needs to be taken into consideration. Not that there's any hindrance, but your yoga practice should be supportive to that health. It shouldn't become a depletive practice. And that's also what's really important as a personalized approach. So, for instance, if you have an immune response going on, your body is reacting to something. So you always want your immune system to work. It shouldn't be on or off. You shouldn't be like hyper vigilant, because some things then you may have taken on, let's say, a foreign body, as we call it, which is may have picked up something in the air, somebody around you has a cold. Your soldiers, I like to say, are kind of ready for war. And you kind of want them there, but you don't always want them to be in a state of war. And if they are, that's extremely tiring on your body. So you may find that you're more lethargic. You may find that also you take longer to recover from a cold. You may find also something that you may have a bit of a sniffle or something like this. A bit more sensitive, I'd say, to just stuff that's going on around. Wouldn't really say it influences massively your emotions, but I'm not an expert on that particular topic. But just that your body is acting all the time. And then think of it a little bit when you've recovered from the flu or your cold and you are a bit achy, you are just a bit off. That's also just because your body is still in a state of response. So ideally, your yoga practice in that instance wants to just decrease that state of response. And that needs to be very, very gentle. And the most important thing and the biggest gift you can give yourself here would be through your breath. Because your breathing, your respiratory system acts on everything else in your body. Think of all the systems of your body, they're never isolated. So if your immune system's up, meaning it's responsive, it's going to affect also your breathing capacity. Also, maybe your muscles, as I said, a little bit achy. You maybe feel like your digestion's a bit sluggish. All of those things work together. Your head might be a bit foggy. So if you go in and you start to kind of support or soothe through your breath, your respiratory system, that's going to also help your circulation. It's going to be a little bit easier to circulate your blood because you're now just supporting the movement of the circulation in the blood through the movement of your body and the asanas themselves. And then also kind of how you breathe a little bit deeper in your diaphragm, which is kind of right in the center of your chest. This is a huge muscle in itself. Your aorta, which is the largest blood vessel to your heart, goes directly through your diaphragm. So if you learn to really breathe and just expand your breath and kind of breathe really deeply, which would lower your diaphragm lowers so that your lungs can expand and fill with air, and then it kind of goes up in like a C to push out the air in the lungs. Imagine if you just kind of did that in a really wide open way. Your aorta is also then going to be slightly massaged and also going to have more space for your blood to pass. So that's also sometimes why your blood pressure drops with your breath as well. So everything, that's just one example, but everything is just like a domino effect in your body. So in that sense, when you're recovering from something like COVID or in those instances, and your body just needs to have a gentle sense of recovery, breathing, going into your body, very light movement. Also in specifically, you asked postures. Some postures themselves support particular organs depending on where, you're doing that pose. And what I hypothesize is really kind of supporting your immune system as well, is that you have, your thyroid, you have your lymph nodes also around your neck. When you're moving your head, when you're gazing in certain points in an Ashtanga practice, you're also massaging a lot of the muscles, the nodes, the parts of the lymph system, your circulatory system. All of it's being kind of massaged from the inside out as you practice yoga. And all of that's going to relieve these blockages. If you come back to that first idea of your knee being a bit kind of swollen because maybe an injury or something, light movement in a supportive manner can also just allow that kind of blockage of the cells from that specific point to just kind of spread out again through your body. Because your body has the ability of responding to something, sending your immune systems to a certain part of your body. And it's also your body's role to then retract the soldiers, draw them back in, absorb them back into your body. And that needs a light activated response as well. So you do want your immune system always to be active, but never too much and never too low. So eventually you're just always wanting to support it. I hope that's clear.
Yeah, that was fantastic. Just understanding deeply what's going on in our body. Thank you so much for that, Liz. I feel like when we open up these topics and share them with all of us, and we understand throughout this description better what's going on, let's all take a deep breath, because it was so beautiful how you described it. So you will not forget that your aorta is going through your diaphragm. And so you will maybe have the sensation of it's opening, I'm relaxing, right? And I feel like a lot of people do sports to combat anxiety and depression. And it's probably a good way to start getting yourself out of a difficult time, out of a slump. But at the same time, and that's also what I realized lately with a few clients of mine, we shouldn't do it just to cope with it, with the anxiety, depression, whatever you're dealing with, because like Liz just said, we need to also understand, I'm anxious. Maybe I need slower movement to actually bring my system down and help my immune system to relax. Is that right? Yeah. To regulate and to come back into homeostasis. And I think it's really important. So if you're a big sports person, check in with yourself. Are you doing this to outrun your anxiety or depression, or are you actually doing it because it feels energizing and fueling for you, right? I think there's always a big difference between the two. And so after talking about all things yoga and all things immunology, I think you gave us a really good insight into your work. And on your website, obviously I was doing a little bit of my homework. I saw that obviously you bring these two together, but also you said that your purpose lies in teaching and establishing yoga as a personal health practice. How did you realize that purpose? Because like you talked about earlier, you made your doctorate in immunology, and then your teachers were like, what, you're going off to spend your life teaching yoga full time? Why? And obviously there's a reason behind this. And I'm so curious to hear, for maybe there are other practitioners listening right now, or people who go their own path. Tell us a little bit about how you found your purpose in this, and what keeps you going, what makes you sure that this is your path, although maybe something else could have been for you. So yeah, I'm curious to hear more about it.
Thank you, Vanessa. I think it's always such a nice question to come back to after a few years as well of life, and seeing where whatever you're still doing, or whatever track you've gone on to. I think one of the earliest memories I have of being in a hospital, and I was volunteering. And I remember I used to do the tea trolley. So I'd go around with the tea and I'd sit with some of the patients. And I remember thinking, when you're in a hospital, it's really scary and it's really horrible and you're very much alone. And I remember thinking, I don't feel like I want to help somebody in that state. I want to help them before they're there. Because it did get raised a lot, whether I would do medicine, whether I'd go down that line. And I remember thinking, as a doctor, I don't think I can really help people before they're here. And so in those moments, I would just sit and hold their hand, and mostly it was elderly patients. And I remember thinking, I just want to be here for you. And I want to even be here to support you being healthy, because I also really loved, in a very bizarre way, dissection. I really loved this. And I remember for a long time, I thought I wanted to be a pathologist. And then I also, I think we had about this before, because I was just so like, oh my God, it's just so fascinating. But I realized I was just so fascinated about the human body. But again, the life is ended. It's finished. And what could I have hopefully maybe done to help that person's life be more healthy? And I think that was really what appealed to me about medicine. It's not about keeping your body pristine or perfect or disciplined and hard, because that can be very easily taken in the sense of reaching perfection in a yoga practice or in any type of physical movement. For me, it was very much understanding that I loved the body, but I also wanted to help it stay well, because the body is the most miraculous thing we have for ourselves. And I think a lot of people don't really know that. And I'm someone who really needs to understand stuff to get a little bit of respect for it. And so when I started to learn about my body, and I remember having one really clear moment when I was in a lecture, and we were learning about the brain and all the stuff that drugs would do on the brain and all this stuff. And I thought, why would anybody want to go and harm themselves? Because it's so amazing. And I'm not judging anyone, whatever we do. I've also been drunk many times in my life, all these things that you get told, kill your brain cells, all this stuff. But it's so amazing. How can we help our bodies be really well? Because later on then, when I was learning about health, particularly cancer, you sometimes feel that there's actually a lot of odds against you. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in life. And so I think for me, it really was in the sense of, again, I want to live well. I want to live life happily. I want to do what I would like to do in my life. And therefore, my body has to be able to do that as well. And I think in a weird way, it came from seeing the illness and the loss, and understand of having, working in hospitals. I worked in palliative care as well, hearing people's stories about what they wanted to do in life, what they miss, what they're sad about, and feeling like life is so precious and so short. And how can we just help to enjoy that and be well doing that? And I remember that also when I was younger, I was a waitress, and I really liked that job. And I remember thinking also, when I was looking at what I would do for my degree, thinking I just want to do something that I really like and I'm really interested in, because I'm going to be all in. I'm going to be in for this. I'm going to want to learn this. So I also realized, and I thought to myself, everybody hopefully in life would be able to do what they really love, because then also we might not take as many sick days. If we're not feeling fulfilled, and anxiety also comes up because you're not living your true purpose, or you're not being your authentic self, let's say, and you're hiding something, or you're having to take on huge stresses to do something as well. All of that takes a toll on your body. And that eventually is, as I said, the small daily habits to keep yourself well, the small daily habits that are unhealthy will also be taking a toll. And that's sometimes a very hard thing to digest. Sleep is one of the things also that can be horrible when it's just not on a regular basis. A lot of people also don't understand how important sleep is to their body. It's the way you reset, it's the way you restore your body, it's the way your body repairs itself. So if you're not giving your body chance, time, space, compassion, relaxing moments for your body to reset, it's not going to function really well or for a long period of time. Of course, stuff happens and you can do all of that and stuff still happens. I'm not saying that's going to ensure that you have a great life, But I remember just having this mindset that I really want to try to do that. And I really want to help people do that, because for me, then if you're well, you can go and live,
a life with family. You can go and do the job that you love and just keep feeding into that feeling of being well. And it was really, I think, as simple as that. And so when I was doing my PhD and I said, I love research, I love learning about things, I was like, I miss the people. Where's the people in this? I was working on a malaria drug. And I remember thinking, I'm going to do this for a pharmaceutical company to make millions and billions. I don't want to give them all that money. And I don't want them to be the person to help other people. People should be helping themselves or could be helping themselves. Again, not in the sense of if you're in a disease or, there's a lot of other factors that are taken into consideration here. But for me, it was like, I want to be with people. And on a daily basis, I want them to be reaching a state of good health on a daily basis. And because yoga was something that I kept as my tool in my tool bag, hidden away a little bit as such, I then started realizing, well, we've done this for years and years and years as Asian practices. Maybe there's something in that which is also involved in us just being healthy and living well. And that's really the journey I started taking. So when I finished the PhD, I then started learning then. Of course, I needed the knowledge of what yoga was and how to do it. And then from 2020, this has kind of been my journey of joining the two again together and really now understanding what is the research behind yoga and what's it doing for your body, and making my own hypotheses and drawing this knowledge together. Because for me, that just makes what I think sense for the future of healthcare, for the future of where we're going to go. Because as much as we have already this wonderful body available to us, learning about it, moving within it, being in touch with it, understanding how it works, when it's off, what that feels like, making that become less scary, making you feel more confident in yourself, reducing anxiety, all of those things. I believe your body is basically like cheering underneath. It's like, yes, finally you're listening to me. Because what happens, and I think you asked this a little bit before, is over time, if you stop listening to your body, and that can be things like just lethargy, being tired, brain fog, not falling to sleep very easily, not staying asleep, or just feeling a general sense of just being a bit hypercharged, that's a conversation your body's trying to have with you. And often in life, if you have a very busy job or family life and all those things, that chatter from your body gets put to the bottom of the pile. And eventually your body might be like, you know what, I'm not going to speak to her anymore. She's not listening to me. And it won't say it, but it's still going on. And then what happens one day is it just starts to shout at you. And that can be a burnout. That could be you collapse. That could be a seizure. You can go through the spectrum on that. And that's, as I said before, sometimes the point where change happens. So through a yoga practice, having moments when you're still and starting to listen to your body is a huge gift you can give yourself. But as you know, it also can be a very scary journey, because then it's like, I knew deep down I wasn't well, but stuff now is here. What does that mean? But that's actually a really good place to be in of discovery, because you can then find through these yoga practice, getting into your breath, getting into your body, moving this stagnant energy around, finding people to support you, getting in touch with getting comfortable with being in that place is really the work or the effort that I would say is worth it. So that's, where Vanessa comes in to help you, get safe and soothed in being in that place. But it's really that your body likes to chat. Your body wants to have a dialogue with you. And you can even take this as far as to say your mind and your body is one, your spirit and your mind and your body is one. So whatever you believe in that sense. But often we really feel detached to ourselves. Like, oh, my body is this. No, you are that. My body just says, no, you do that. And it's sometimes just having the middleman just make you hold your own hand and say, that's you actually. How do you feel about that? Let's go to that spot. Let's work with that spot and let it out and move through it and breathe there. And let's keep going to that spot and releasing it. That's what I think I really like doing. Yeah.
It was just, I was just over here sitting and listening and sipping on my tea. And I just felt how you're talking about the body and yoga it's so poetic because, like you said, we are a miracle. Our body is a miracle. And I could totally feel your passion and your excitement and your desire to really help people. And it sounds like that's what I see in you, that you found your calling. And your story is so unique. And I want this to inspire people on the other side of this microphone. You don't need to do things a certain way. And we talked about this over lunch earlier because Liz said Ashtanga is quite strict practice and you do it a certain way. And you being an immunologist, bringing together those tools and this knowledge with your yoga practice, and now not just doing Ashtanga in a studio, in person, as you do, as you're supposed to do, but actually deciding, no, you know what? I'm actually going to change things up and I'm going to move my business online. And I think that's incredibly brave because you are stepping out of what you're supposed to do. And although we all know there's lots and lots of yoga practitioners to see online, I think what Liz is doing really inspires me because it is different. And I'm going to let her speak for herself in a moment. But I just want to say that I believe we all have this unique way of bringing all our life skills, our gifts, our qualities together. And it's an opportunity for you to just create the life that you want to. Because, you know, Liz was teaching in studios, in her own studio actually in Lisbon, Ashtanga Yoga Lisbon, for a long time now. A year she worked, 10 years in Lisbon teaching yoga live in studios and then having her own studio for a year and then realizing, oh, maybe it's something else completely that I want. Yeah, so tell us a little bit about your journey as a business owner in yoga, how that feels to you, because I can imagine there are also a lot of practitioners out there who are like, ooh, making yoga a business feels wrong or feels commercial. How do you deal with all these things? And yeah, what compelled you to bring your business online? What's your journey with that?
It was scary and it is hard and it's still a bit scary. But I think for me, it came down to what is the message I want to share and how do I want to support people? Because as you said, for 10 years, I worked in a studio, 3 classes a day, sometimes, let's say 15 classes a week. I remember my roommate at the time being like, I've never known a yoga teacher to work as much as you work. And at the time I thought, yeah, this is great, fantastic. And it was. And I was single. I lived away from my family, so I had no family commitments. I was living in Lisbon. My family's in the UK, most of them. And I could do that day in, day out, 20-year-old, never get tired. But, you know, fast forward, coming to the end of 10 years of that, and I thought, do I want to be doing this still in 10 years? And I felt to myself, I don't. Because there were some moments where I was asked the question, are you fulfilled in life? What would you like to add into your life? And I knew I want to have more time with my family. I want to have more time with my friends. I want to have more time that's outside of this. Not that I loved yoga any less or that I loved teaching any less. I just felt I'm preaching this, but I don't feel I have a balanced life. I'm preaching balance in yoga, but I don't have a balanced life. And so I was preparing myself to start to eventually leave that studio. We were trying to get another teachers and those things coming up. 2020 came, COVID hit, and that happened. So for me and my boss at the time, we worked out that was actually a kind of a way that I could exit because the studio had to close. And for me, it also meant that the online world became available. And for me to start a business in a sustainable way, I didn't have to rent a studio. I wasn't able to rent any physical space, obviously because of COVID restrictions. That being able to then create an online business just became such a attainable and easy thing to do at that time that I thought, yes, of course, I'm going to do this. So that's really how I began teaching. I didn't have that plan to be online a year before I did that. And so it was through that step that then online world of teaching transformed the way that I taught, for me anyway, because I understood I need to be a better teacher now to know how to support somebody in a verbal adjustment. And what I mean by that is Ashtanga yoga can be very hands-on to the point that I think can be too much. The practitioner, the student relies on the teacher to put them into poses. And for me, I was very much veering away from that approach. And it was through my own personal practice during COVID time that I kind of relearned things about my own body, physically practicing yoga, and then how to best support the student in front of me on a screen so that they could understand how to feel these things in their body, but for themselves without me touching them. And really that they didn't need me to be there touching them or adjusting them. And so in that sense, I saw students really kind of having their own moment of like, oh my God, I can do this and this is amazing. And then that itself spurs on a different motivation. And for me, it also made my role as a teacher to become much more of a supportive role for their process. It wasn't dependent on me that then they reached a posture, that then they reached a certain depth. It became dependent on them. But I was kind of the witness. I was there to support and give them the encouragement. And that really started to shift my mindset in the sense of that's how I want to teach. That's how I want to support. Again, because it made so much sense that I was giving their responsibility of their depth and understanding of their practice in their hands. And I was just being a support to that, as I said before. So that's really how I then started approaching teaching online, and then kind of back and forth through COVID, sometimes in person, sometimes not. That's when we were together also, when I was teaching in a co-work space. And so I was also restricted in kind of a good way to have a small group through this few years, I'd say 21 to 23. And it was also a period of time when I was going back and forth to England for my mom and taking care of her. So having an online business also then just became this business that I could run parallel to my family needs. And through that time and a little bit afterwards, I started thinking, surely I'm not the only one who needs this. Surely I'm not the only one who loves an Ashtanga yoga practice, who loves a yoga practice, but life is also demanding them, and it needs to have an equal level of support. It needs to have an equal level of time for that. They do the yoga practice, but they're also living their life, or they're doing yoga practice, but they're traveling, or they're doing this, but they also need to travel for work. And so that's when I started really thinking, this is working for me now better than it ever did before, business plus personally practicing online. I have my teacher who's based in Brazil, Lucas, who's a very dear friend, fantastic teacher. I practice with him. It works for me. And I just thought, yeah, this can work. This really can work. But the traditional model of Ashtanga is you build your studio, you build a place, students will come, and that's how it is. It can be up to a 6 times a week practice. So from 2022, when my mum very sadly passed away, I had held on to this idea of, okay, now I can be in person. Let's do it. So 2 months later, January, I booked a studio. That's what I started. 6 months in, and I thought, I don't know if I really want to do this. I don't know if my heart is in it anymore. I'm not the 23-year-old who did this again. And 28-year-old, sorry, not 23. But I thought to myself, it's not what I thought it was going to be. And it really actually probably broke my heart a bit, because it's what I had done for 10 years. It's what I was trained in for 10 years, let's say. But being there and being in person, it wasn't that I didn't love teaching. I just didn't like the structure of it being that way, because it just didn't fit into the life that I was wanting to still lead. I knew even more that family was important. And I knew now, seeing family in England, being able to visit them on a regular basis, my dad, my sisters, nieces. I myself moved in with my partner. I then had 2 stepkids. And for me, it was the first time that everything that I wanted to include in my daily life was there. And then suddenly it was like, I'm tired for that, and I don't have the energy for that. I'm waking up at 5 a.m., even sometimes before that. I wasn't doing it 6 times a week, but 4 times a week was enough to tire me out for the rest of my day. And I thought to myself, I don't think I want that. I've worked really hard to get to a point where this now is a priority for me as well as my job. Having family, supporting that, having a partner, building a home, supporting my family. Surely there's a way I can do the two. And it took me a good 6 months before I did any change. A lot of tears, a lot of conversations, because I was saying to you over lunch, I was seeking somebody's permission to tell me, you can drop the studio, Liz. Do something, find another way. And in kind of the back of my head, I came around and I kept coming around to like a membership, an online membership, somewhere that there's always support for the student, no matter if I'm there or not. They have a recorded class to do with me. They have a meditation to do with me. They have a blog post or a community post that I've written and they can comment on whenever they need. And that started forming in my head. And so every time I was back at the studio and teaching, and I kept thinking, is this it? Is this not? One more month. Yeah, just one more month. After summer, just one more month. And it came to the point where I'd probably spoken about it enough that then those around me started saying, like, you just need to do something now because you're obviously not very happy doing this and it's not working. And I'd also financially put into renting the studio and those things. So I reached out to the studio and I spoke to them and also kind of made a plan to trial an online course. So I recorded everything. I created a beginner's online course for Ashtanga yoga. And I thought, let's just trial it like that. Let's get some idea of what involves as a system to be online. I also made what I think was one of the best decisions to hire a business coach and to ask them specifically, I need to understand how to run an online business. I think that's what I'm going to go in for. And also trusting my intuition, because in those moments of my life where I've maybe thought about moving to Lisbon and doing a PhD, what about that? It's a bit different. Worked out. What about, trying this and moving to a studio and starting teaching yoga? Okay, that worked out 10 years ago when I started. And I thought to myself, that little voice, intuitive voice is also there again. And it's saying to you to do this. Let's try and do this. And so I kind of got it all ready to start to launch. It's from January 2024. And a big thing that I had to really understand, I'm still totally understanding, is who is it that you want to support in the work that you're doing? Because I really felt, maybe for the first time I'm going to voice this like on air, but was that I needed to be here for the whole of the Lisbon Ashtanga community and support all of them. And I thought, that's not my job. I came from a very prestigious school doing that, a huge amount of commitment to that. But all of those people maybe don't speak the language that I speak, and that's okay. So let's find the people who resonate with me, how I teach, what I'm doing, and how I'm doing it, and that it makes sense for them. Because I needed myself as an Ashtanga practitioner support online, flexibility, classes, but there's still so much that I felt could be around that. And a lot of resources that I felt needed to be also off the yoga mat. When life gets hard, what do you do? If you need a meditation because you're just completely exhausted, but you want to do something, what do you do? I want to do a 20-minute class because I can't be on my mat for an hour and a half. What do I do? And I needed that. And so that was really something that I thought, there's going to be people who are also out there have a really big commitment and they love their Ashtanga yoga practice. But they're in also this understanding now it can't be maybe what it was for them, or it never was that for them, but they want to do this because it somehow resonates with them, but they have half an hour 3 times a week. Can they still do Ashtanga? Yes, 1000% yes. And that for me is really what I created the membership out of. The need that I felt, what I was also seeing in some of the students, for instance, people in Lisbon, you may know also Vanessa, prices here to rent just went absolutely bonkers. Students needed to move out of the city because they no longer could afford to live here. Therefore, they were coming to me, Liz, I can't come to the Shala anymore in the morning. What do I do? Or I just had a baby. I cannot come in the morning now. What should I do? I have a work commitment. I'm out for 2 weeks. What should I do? So all of those people, I thought, yeah, there's a way that I can hopefully still support you because we resonate with each other as a student to teacher. We've built that relationship over some time. Therefore, what can I do for these people? Yeah. So that's really what the membership grew out of. And it's completely still a work in progress because it's only in its 3rd month. But it's a platform really that I just love to share what is yoga. And it's all based around what can yoga give you? what does it mean to you? What off mat support do you need? What practices do you need? And currently we're in March, which is a 31 daily yoga habit. So every day there's an email from me. You have a class, which is a 10-minute meditation, a sleep routine, some tips, all of my own personal practices that I've done over the last plus 12 years there, because I think that's really relevant to life. That's really what you're doing with your life right now. It's really what a practice should be, supporting you in your life right now. And so that's the journey that I've come to now. And I think it also just provides a place to, I never like to say educate people on their body, but re-educate, because you knew that you know, this is you, but just kind of, again, just re-educate you, remind you, your body does that. Let's get in sync with that again. Let's do this practice to help you find a good way to sleep. Let's do this meditation so you switch off your mind, Let's have a 20-minute practice that's Ashtanga, that's attainable, so that you can do that. You feel good doing that. It's what you need. It's really kind of bending your yoga practice for you, and no longer feel that you have to bend and sacrifice a lot in your life just so you can do this yoga practice. That for me isn't yoga. That for me isn't sacrificing time with family, sacrificing personal space so that you can have this practice. It's actually, what does that practice really give me so that I am fulfilled in all these other parts of my life? That's where I think I'm really at right now.
I love everything about this. Thank you for sharing your precious work, Liz, and everything you shared with us today, and also just your own process of business creation using a yoga practice, which is quite spiritually minded, but you combining the spirit and the science, and I love that. I do that too. And I feel that you're really putting your yoga into practice for yourself. And I love this because we don't need to sacrifice our own needs in order to be in service for others, right? And like you said, you've been in service for others, for the community in Lisbon, especially for the past 10, 12 years. And it's totally okay to not want to bend for others only. I can feel, and you all can probably feel, Liz's dedication to her work and her calling. And it's absolutely beautiful and genuine and so pure. And you really found your place, and it makes me happy to talk to someone extraordinary like you. And I hope it's an inspiration for all of you listening, that you can have both. You can be in service in whatever you do in your life, and at the same time you can also, and that sounds a little cheesy, but I'm going to say it anyway, make your own dreams come true. Yeah, like self-care and care for others can coexist, no matter if you're actually taking care of a loved one, a family member, or through your work, taking care of other people. And I love that you're putting your yoga into your own practice and decided to, you know what, this feels best for me to create this online business and this online community and membership. And I highly recommend you to check out Liz's work. We put obviously all the information in the show notes so you can access it. I think she also has a free practice. Yeah, there are 2 free practices you can join. Follow her on Instagram. We put all the information in the show notes. Definitely check it out. I love her work. It's liberating. She's a wonderful practitioner and teacher and friend. And yeah, I just want to close our conversation maybe just with one thing that you really want to share and give to whoever is listening with us today.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, for that. Honestly, such a lovely thing to be here with you. I think I would share in the sense of trust the process of reconnecting back to yourself, because you are incredible. Your body, is incredible. It has so much to offer you, and you can live well in your body. And I just really encourage you, in whatever practice you choose, if it's yoga, sound healing, any practice that gets you back in touch with yourself, invest in that, invest in yourself, because it really is the best form of healthcare, of support, of love, self-compassion. And I think you're going to live a much happier and supported life if you do that. There's wonderful people around you to support that journey as well. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you so much.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. I hope you could soak up some of that wisdom. If you need some more, come back to the episode and get another injection of it, because it's so worth it. I feel like Liz was dropping so many wisdom bombs on us, not just about yoga, not just about her personal journey as an entrepreneur, but also about immunology, about how to live a good life, how to be in your body, what to do for your body. And that preventative care is something we all should think about more. And I don't know how you feel, but I just want to jump on the mat and tune into one of Liz's yoga practices. So that's what I'm going to do now. Again, everybody, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Please find all the infos to get to Liz's courses and website in the show notes below. Give her a like on Instagram, give her a follow there. And, you make these episodes, so please do share, subscribe, give us a 5-star review if you can, so we can produce more episodes like this one for you. And thank you so much for being here. This podcast means so much to me, and I cannot wait for the next episode to come out. So thank you, I love you, and I hope to see you soon. Until next time, take good care.